Oh, welcome on stage, Esbjørn.
Yeah. Oh, hey. Awesome. Nice to see you all. I'd like to start talking about a topic that was an epiphany for me personally, that I think might be interesting for you, and that I think is kind of the biggest unfulfilled potential that I see out there. And it's that complexity is not super complicated. And something that I like to call the super complicated trap. So I'll tell you what that is, how you can spot it, and how you can avoid it. But first, I'd like to just do a quick and very simplified recap about complexity and complicated. So my sort of memory rule is that complicated is like a machine, like a watch in this case, a watch that probably doesn't work, but anyway. And complexity is like an ecosystem where there are so many parameters that you can't really keep track of it. In a complicated system, this is way too much text, I realize that, but maybe someone will have time to read it. Cause and effect are clear, and the system will stay the same, and the end results and the path to the end result is clear and known. Delivery times can be calculated, and the instruction manuals are useful because you can do the same thing over and over again. Examples are like building a car, constructing a bridge, installing software, or maybe filling it out of form. So good methods is to use methodologies and frameworks, to copy good practices from others, to train people to be experts, and to predict and plan what's going to happen. On the contrary, in a complex system, like an ecosystem, the dependencies are intricate, there is so much going on that it's hard to keep track, and therefore it's hard to know what the end result will be and how the path there will go. Good examples are exploring a new continent or a forest that you haven't been to protecting the environment, to take care of or reorganize a company or develop software. And here good examples of what you do is to experiment, to learn lots of things fast, to build your own practices instead of taking others, and to train people to question and innovate and try new stuff. And to inspect and adapt. The funny thing that I noticed was that even though this is pretty clear and straightforward, we tend to do this. So most of the situations we're working in are on the complex side, and most of our tools and methods are on the complicated side. And I think that's kind of funny. So a few examples of that. Decision making. A complex solution would be to have a self-organized, autonomous team that is empowered and are allowed to do whatever they need to solve the problem, to have rapid decisions, and to foster innovation and agility and so on. But instead, most of us are working in centralized decision-making structures with a lot of layers that you have to go through to get to the decision that you need. And it's all done to have the correct decision, whatever that is. But you're slow, and it's a low grade of innovation. Another example is in product creation, where if we do a complex approach to this complex problem, we probably want to have a flexible approach. We need to do regular updates and learnings and use every data we can get to do new stuff. But instead, what we usually do is we are making up really long-term roadmaps with fixed timelines and feature sets, and then we just ignore all the data that comes in because it kind of messes with the plan. In learning and development, instead of doing individual stuff where people get to learn what they need to do their work right now, we plan what everyone should learn for the next year, as if everyone was robots listening to the same teacher telling the same stuff. And finally, in software development, we all know that we should do engagement and improvement or empowerment, and to have cross-functional autonomous teams and all that. And instead we do rigid, overstructured frameworks that give the illusion of safety, but it leads to reduced innovation, speed, and capability. So why? Part of that is that it feels familiar to do the complicated stuff, because we've all been in complicated system for most of our work life. Another part is that we know how to do it, and it's always easier to do what we know and what we know how to do instead of the stuff that is weird or strange and that we don't know. Another part is the environment. The complicated stuff is expected. It's invited, encouraged, and appreciated by the organization usually. Someone said that no one was ever fired for hiring IBM, but I also think that no one was ever fired for making a too detailed project plan, because managers love that. But the thing that I want to look at more closely is what I like to call the super complicated trap. And that has to do with approximation. We like to do approximations of stuff. When we see something that seems really complex and weird, we start to say, oh, this looks like... And then we try to use the tools that can be used there and hope that it works. And most of the time, it maybe does. Here's the super complicated trap. So someone looks at this super complex ecosystem and they say, maybe not out loud, but in the back of their mind, what if this ecosystem could be approximated or be treated like a very, 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 very complicated machine? Then I can use all my old tools and all my old stuff and create very complicated solutions. Great. But complexity is not another level of complicated. Complexity is not very, very, very complicated. It's a whole other being, and it requires a different, much more complex approach and a complex mindset, not just a tool, but another way of thinking. This is the epiphany that I got, because I was doing that thing too. I was saying that, you know, Scrum is a really good way of doing it until someone said, okay, but I question Scrum itself. Well, you can't do that because that's what we need. So why is it a trap? Well, several reasons. If you do the super complicated thing instead of the proper complex thing, it reduces your flexibility and adaptability, it creates bureaucracy, it creates layers of people who needs to be informed, it paralyzes the organization, and it makes you not be creative and innovative. It makes people leave because they don't like all that, for sure, and that's bad, but the two worst ones are the last two. So it's ineffective, it doesn't really solve the problem, it just solves a snapshot of the problem. It's like trying to create a key for a lock that always changes. As soon as you have a key ready, the lock has changed and your key doesn't work anymore. And even worse than that, complicated solutions are made so that if it doesn't work, you plan better next time. You make it even more complicated. So if you're trying a complicated solution for a complex problem, and it doesn't work because it won't, then you will do it even more complicated next time. And then you get safe 6 point whatever. So how do you spot it? Over-planning, desire for control and safety, you know, all that stuff that we recognize, but we kind of close our eyes to. And how do you avoid it? Here's my list of 10 steps. Embrace uncertainty, seriously. Like uncertainty and love confusion. Think environments instead of results. Think of what would create the result I like instead of how can I actually create a result myself. Collect diverse perspectives, because the only way to get close to that whole picture, the complex picture, is to have as many perspectives as you can. Build strong visions, but let the processes be very flexible. And push decisions to the lowest possible level. Cultivate DDOs or DDEs. Use collective knowledge, so be a group of different knowledges when you work. And start small and too early, and then iterate. If you're the person who likes a list of 10 stuff, then you should probably by now have seen that it's just 8 things in this list. And that's because there are 2 more things that is very complicated to do. And that is to focus on processes and frameworks and find a 10-step checklist and aim at doing all of that. This is not that kind of thing. You should instead gradually shift your mindset and your culture around you by doing those things yourself, and to start with a couple of them to start with, not all of them, because that is the complex way to go. 3 things to remember. Complexity is not super complicated. Become the explorer and embrace uncertainty, and be the change you want to see in the world so that you reflect that complexity. Thank you.